All right. Happy Sunday, everybody. Oh my goodness. Here we are on a Sunday, and I get to talk about content repurposing, which is like one of my favorite things ever. So, I have the entire content repurposing framework here, and I am super excited to share this with you. I do want to give you a little bit of backstory about how I actually got here first, and and then I'll give you the teaser here as well as we did all of this and this absolutely works, but I realized it's not everything. So, this is just part of the ticket, the key to content activation. So, welcome to the second session here. The reason that, let's see, which one are we on here today? We are on the content repurposing framework. Ooh, I better get out of the way of that, right? All right, so here's where we are. This system is something that I designed when it was about 5 years ago, 6 years ago, something like that. And I had a customer who this is at the time when we were full on running our agency, right? And I had a customer come to me and said, "Hey, I'm already creating all of this other content. Can't you take everything that I've done and fill my social content calendar with it?" And I was like, I probably can, right? And so I got totally involved in content repurposing. Like, how do we take the one thing we already did and blow this up, right? What I realized is a couple of things. One, when you're taking one piece of content and you're turning that into 30, 40 different pieces of content all over, it gets messy quite quickly. So you have to have a process that repeats and a way to effectively take your content, repurpose it into snippets and things that are actually going to work and get people's attention, and bring it all back together in a way that makes sense, and then track what's getting posted where. Because if you don't have this system, you end up with a giant mess. And I've seen this over and over and over as people get involved, and then it's like you're pulling your hair out because all of a sudden you just have this giant mess, and it becomes super overwhelming and it becomes frustrating, and then crack, you are out, right? Don't want to keep doing this because it's just a giant cluster. Well, we don't want that for anybody. So I tried and failed at this system 3 times before I finally landed in these steps. And these steps are literally, if you follow these steps for any kind of content repurposing you are going to do, this will save you time and money. I guarantee it. All right. So here is where we are going to dive in. All right. Let's turn this on. Here we go. We have some slides. Okay. So we are talking all about the content repurposing framework. These are the 6 steps that are going to boost your omnipresence factor and save time. Now, what the heck is the omnipresence factor? The omnipresence factor is, let's blow this out here a little bit. So remember, in the marketing trends, we talked about the 6 top trends. And one of those trends is really that omnipresence factor. But what we're talking about is consistent messaging and branding that is going to show up in the areas where your customers are at. So being present on all of these platforms, and that can be offline, that can be emails, that can be printed materials, live venues, aside from just what happens on social media. And then we also do not want to forget, or remember also from session number 1, the Google juice. The Google juice is super important because who here has done this? We come along and we're like, oh yeah, this sounds really interesting, but I don't want to be trapped in somebody's funnel. What I want is to understand more about what's happening here. And so I've done this a million times myself. I go and Google search something. We go backdoor research something. Instead of like clicking the links that are provided for us and getting involved, we go and Google search it. So where you show up in Google is also super, super important. So we already talked about that. Now this repurposing framework is actually going to help you get showing up on Google. So this, let's see if I can grab here we go. So this is the framework that's going to help you do that. All right, so let's get started. Number 1 is the character step. So in character, what do we want to do? This is where you as the business owner are going to create your core content. This is your story. This is your genius, your brain dump. This is the only part that you really need to be responsible for. And that's because nobody else can repeat this. Now, this is ultimately, just so you know, like we do all of this based around, here's our topic of influence. So we talk largely about content repurposing, but we're also talking about Google Juice. And I'm also talking about SEO optimized websites. And I'm also talking about telling stories and traction marketing and conversation marketing, all these things that sort of like surround what we're doing here with content marketing and content activation. And so I keep creating different content that's core content all around this. What happens is all of that, creating all of those topical things, start to let you be seen as an authority on Google. But it's also really great content that you can then continue to repurpose, right? So that's ultimately what we want. It all starts with amazing, great content. And don't be afraid to, my dog Eddie has come to join us, but don't be afraid to give away some of your best stuff, right? Tell all the goods, all the secrets, right? You're gonna give away some of this good stuff, and we're gonna repurpose it. So the very first step then that we take for repurposing is we move into the copy step. Now here is where it's super, super key in the copy step, and this is what we teach in our program. So we match up keywords that are in alignment, like what Google says. Yes, this is what people are searching for when they're trying to find answers to this thing that you are talking about. So we match those things up. And then we also have, like, we take transcripts of your video. If you're starting from video, we take outlines. If it's a blog to begin with, we have a writer pull out all of those little sound bites, or create little snippets, or create the awesome little chunks that we want to be able to repurpose. This is also the point where we have a writer combine the optimized keywords into what we're doing and create a blog. So this is the key to how you can have blogs on your website, but not be a blogger as a marketer. So we start here right from the foundation. You don't jump into go create the video snippets, go create the graphics. You have to start with the copy first. This will save you so much time, I guarantee it. All right, the next step is creative. So this is where now here's all the copy that we want. And then we go and give this to graphic designers, video editors, anybody else that's like, you can create infographics, slides. You can create not landing page, sorry, what's the word I'm looking for? Like opt-in lead magnets. All of these things can be created from the initial copy, right? How many of you here have worked with graphic designers in the past? The graphic designers, I love them to pieces, but what they do is if they don't have very, very clear direction about, like, I want this copy designed in this way. If they don't have that very clear direction, then it becomes a back and forth game. So you end up spending more because they don't have clear direction and they don't know what words are going to go in. They'll start picking their own, and it just becomes a giant disaster. So designers and video editors are much better if you're like, here's exactly what I want, and here's exactly the formatting kind of branding that I want this designed around. Then it becomes really, really fast. So you definitely want to start with that. We do meme style graphics. We do we actually take, for every core content that we repurpose for ourselves, we actually break it down into sort of a Cliff's Notes kind of version. We create, like, here's the top tips, key takeaways from this. And we turn those into individually into Instagram, like individual posts, like here's tip number 1, here's tip number 2. And we'll post those on Instagram as a carousel. We also do the same tips in story format. So tall format, we use that on our Facebook stories and our Instagram stories. We also then take all of those tips, combine them together in one really large Pinterest format. And we do that as like an infographic. And then we give that infographic away on our website. So it's just some different ideas, some different ways that you can kind of work on some of your repurposing and some different creative methods, right? We like to take the video snippets. We create little video snippets. And then we'll take some of those and turn them into animated GIFs. So we kind of get all sorts of different kinds, right? So that's the third step. We're going to move from copy into creative. Now here's where you're going to have all of your assets created. And it's really tempting to, once you start getting the assets back, to start posting them right away. But trust me when I say that what you really want to do is focus here on the next step, which is compile. This is one that I learned from us trying and failing several times, that when everything is all, so you have all this content and you have all these different images and videos and all these things combined. So you want to actually bring them all back together in one folder. You want to have, here's the hashtags, here's the call to action that we're going to be using on these posts. Here's all of the different types of copy snippets, different quotes, different little descriptions. And you have all of that stuff pulled together in one place. So when we work on the next step, which is the calendar step, everything is here. And this way you can say, okay, this is ready to now calendar. So I'm actually going to schedule everything out on my calendar. We did this, let me just tell you, we did this and we started publishing and posting things before we did this compile step, and we started publishing out onto the calendar. And what happened was we had a whole bunch of different posts that either got repeated because we hadn't tracked that they had already been posted, or we had sections of content that we had created that never got used, because it was just like, you have to have that organization and structure in there. So those steps are going to save you tons of money and time. All right. And then here's the last step. This step here is catalog. It is so, so important. And I am guilty of trying to skip over this step because it's numbers, and numbers are just like not my favorite thing, right? And I know I'm not alone as an entrepreneur in that, but it's super, super important to pay attention to your numbers. So we want to look at, you're posting all of your stuff. How have they performed after a week? Do an audit after a month and look at what worked, what didn't, what got more engagement. Though if you're watching your numbers, then that is going to ultimately feed back into, so if we look here, like when you're looking at your numbers here, you're like, oh, that really, really worked. So now I'm going to go over here and use that to inform my next copy creation. So it becomes this like cycle. But if you're just creating content based on gut feel, or this is just what I want to do based on an upcoming launch or something, it may not necessarily resonate. We want to make sure that we're checking the numbers and see what people want to hear and what is resonating with them, like what's working. So this entire system, it works perfectly for podcasters, YouTubers, bloggers, blah, 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 blah. What we want is, we want to start with something that is really good content to begin with. Typically, it's going to be some form of educational content along with personal stories, or along with stories that are going to help illustrate that point. If you are creating that content as a good content creator, you're naturally going to have stories involved. You're naturally going to be sharing some of your knowledge and expertise. So these are fantastic places to start. And just remember that like all you really have to focus on is this very first step. And then the rest of these become delegated, and it just becomes a repeatable system. Just kind of goes through that process over and over. All right, that is it. So your next steps are, the next masterclass session that we have is hands-free content activation. So now that you know you can take your amazing content, we know the marketing trends that are going to help you find and engage with the right people. So now you're going to take your awesome content. You're going to go through these repurposing steps. The next place is, okay, I get how I can do all this repurposing, but this is a lot of steps right here, and we can delegate this. So how do you delegate and internally create this content cash machine that your team can run, or even a part-time team? That's what we're going to be talking about in the next session, is how do we take everything we've learned and have somebody internally help make this happen for you, run this repurposing, take advantage of those marketing trends. So that's the key of what we are going to be doing next time. And I'll go ahead and hide this. We'll put up this. Ooh, look at that. Oh, that's not the right one. That's the fourth one. Here we go. There's our next one. All right. So the next step is hands-free content activation, and I am going to be presenting that one on Tuesday live. You can actually go grab it right now. Let me grab this. If you are not already registered for the content activation masterclass, you can go register here, or shoot me a text message anywhere. We can get you registered to make sure you get all of the downloads and all of the awesome setups. And there's already recorded videos. You can catch me live. You can come here with questions. And I'm not sure that I can see all of the questions. I just want to make sure that I'm not missing anything here. Whew, too many windows open. All right, let's do this. And there we go. Okay, do we have any questions that I need to answer here? Okay, I think we're good. Well, if you have any questions about our content repurposing system at all, post in the group here, tag me out, and make sure that you go download the content activation guide. This has all of the 6 steps in there for you, along with some instructions on how you can kind of run that in your business. And plan to join me live next Tuesday, and we'll do a live on the hands-free content activation. And thanks for this. What do you use to add graphics to your presentation? Oh, that's a great question. You can see me kind of looking back and forth there. So we used to use StreamYard. Right now I'm trying out Restream. And so I set up all of these graphics in Canva, imported them into Restream, and then that way I'm able to kind of present my whole show here. But all of our graphics ultimately came from part of our content repurposing system, which are the steps that we just went through. And then I'll also be sharing some of that in the next content activation class, where I'm talking about some of our delegation. I'll give you some tips on some of the places we got some of our graphics done. So awesome. I hope that you guys all have an amazing, amazing weekend. And I'm going to get back to it and make sure that we have all of our downloads available. Hit me up if you have any questions. And thanks so much for being here. Make sure you post comments if you're watching the replay. And I will catch you guys on Tuesday.